Using the power of the internet, you can now watch GLC on any TV in the US, Canada, the UK, and Ireland with Roku. Basically, a box that connects to your television. Roku acts as a middleman between your internet connection and your television. So if you have internet service at your home, chances are high that you can watch all of the great GLC programming. And best of all, it's highly affordable too, with only a one-time fee ranging from $50 to $100. Log on to our website, www.glc.us.com, for details on how you can watch GLC via Roku.
Well, welcome to the midweek update and news. And have we got anything good today?
No good news.
It's not as cold here as it is in Amarillo.
That's right. That is good news.
Sorry
That
for you
is good
people in Amarillo.
Sorry, Amarillo.
And I'm wearing my vest jacket update to remind you we're still going on update.
Roundup. They're kind of one
I'm
and the
not
same.
sure where we're going.
You know, I guess you're thinking that they're kind of one and the same because right now we can't be going live every night. We don't have the energy. And so the only time that we're talking about Roundup really now is on this program. And I've had, like, Sandra Barris sent me an email and said, so how's Roundup going? And so I'm here to tell you a little bit of good news. We got a $50,000 check today that is to help us on that $100,000 IP project that we've got going on.
$200,000 challenge.
A $200,000 challenge because I still have to pay off the SES. And
Really?
from what I'm seeing, conversion time, it's going to be a few months. So before all of that IP stuff is in place. So anyway, it was really, really, really a big, huge relief to the GLC crew to receive that check today because that means we can move forward and move forward we are. But we still need the help.
We sure do.
And we thank you for joining with us. You know, as I am gathering news, and you'll hear it today, and you'll hear it in a video that Doron Keidar sent over. I'm so concerned with what's happening around the world because
That's right.
the media at large is not telling the
Anything.
public anything.
That's right.
And it's downright scary to me.
What makes me the maddest, honey, is that they're not saying anything about all these Christians that are being
Exactly. And we have an article today on Nigeria, what's happening in Nigeria. You hear a little bit maybe about Boko Haram in Nigeria. For 5 years, they have been slaughtering Christians over there.
Yes, they have.
That's actually who ISIS is targeting as well. But you don't really hear about that. I don't know why, but we've got a great article on that, and we're going to kick this thing off. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support so that we can continue to tell the truth about what's going on. We can continue to give you some sound biblical theology on how the church is grafted into Israel and what that means for us. It's a good thing, but it's not good that we haven't understood that we're actually joined to them.
That's right.
So this is why what's happening in Israel is happening. They're wiping out the Jewish people and terrorizing them because Christians, by and large, are standing by and not letting our voices be heard,
That's right.
demanding that our government do what's necessary to put a stop to it. So there you are.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
Okay.
They're doing something. They gave, Hamas $144 million to rebuild.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, we have an article today. Our second article today is going to really shed some light on some things. So hold on to your hats, and Dad's going to share his letter with you right now.
Okay. Dear Al, Tommy, Amy, and all you wonderful people at GLC, I first discovered GLC on the internet when Jeff Cooper was on the show long before Amy came. Well, Jeff Bliss, your
And that's
program-
actually before Amy came back.
Yeah. Your programs are great. Please use our renewal of $100 per month to do what you've been doing, working for the kingdom. And that comes from Carol out of Pampa, Texas.
I hear it's really cold up there, too.
I'm sure.
They're like just east of Amarillo. So thanks for the letter. Sorry it's so cold.
Yeah.
Okay, where are you going now?
We're going to throw that video from Doron Keidar at you. You'll recognize the guest he has with him, I'm sure.
Hi, this is Doron Keidar reporting to you from Jerusalem, Israel. In fact, I'm reporting to you right behind me from the lawn of the Knesset, which is where Israel has its seat of government right here behind me. And so this morning, actually, I've been invited for a special meeting here in the Knesset to discuss the BDS movement and the delegitimization of Israel in the nations. And so this is a very important meeting that we're going to have here in the Knesset in just a few minutes, actually. And I want to report to you specific on this issue because right now I have a special guest from Sweden, actually. He just made Aliyah from Sweden. His name's Jonathan Ben Israel. And he's been working in Sweden and in Scandinavia, lobbying on behalf of Israel for many years on trying to raise support for the Israeli government and the nation of Israel, really, for trying to get recognition, trying to explain the nation of Israel, explain the dynamics as a Jewish brother from this land, and has been working many years in this area, and he's a real expert in this. And I'd like to ask him about the most recent elections that took place about a month ago and completely changed the face of the political face of Sweden and its immediate anti-Israel sentiment that we saw immediately when they declared the Palestinian state as a legitimate reality that needed to take place in this area in order for there to be peace in the Middle East, if you will. So Jonathan, how does this affect Israel? How does it affect Sweden, these type of decision makings that has been taking place now in Sweden?
So first of all, to pinpoint out the factual point is now we have extremely left-oriented, extremely hostile and anti-Israeli government that is ruling Sweden, which is de facto the third largest funder to the so-called Palestinian Authority and to the government of Gaza, of Hamas in Gaza.
So what do you mean is the third largest? Who is? The government or this particular political party that just won the elections?
Well, it's a very good question.
Yeah.
The Social Democratic Party, that is actually the ruling party now of the government, is considering themselves as a sister party to Fatah, which is basically the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, which is the president of the so-called Palestinian Authority.
Yeah.
They are considering as themselves as a sister party that share the same core values,
Which is?
basically to exterminating the only Jewish nation, which is the state of Israel.
Wow.
To battle the Zionist occupier, which is absurd. And what we could see right now in Sweden is, for instance, we have an Islamic minister and his position as a housing minister, Mr. Mehmet Kaplan. We have several ministers that are carrying extremely hostile anti-Israeli sentiment, which is totally legitimate in the case of Sweden. And not only that, by creating this incentive, the legitimate attitude that the state of Israel, the state of Sweden should establish and be a part of the establishing of the Palestinian statehood, shows actually their true intentions by supporting a terrorist-based and terror-filled regime that are killing Jews, Christians, non-Muslims around the world and carrying out this. Recently, I mean, until yesterday, we had several terrorist attacks day after days towards Israeli civilians, Israeli soldiers that are walking on the streets of Israel, of Jerusalem, of Tel Aviv. Imagine that European people are coming and visiting Israel, and suddenly they get stabbed from a Palestinian Muslim terrorist because he doesn't consider them as Muslims or a part of the Palestinian nation.
So in essence, basically what's happening is that this recognition of the Palestinian state within Israel has actually, I would say indirectly, if not even directly, has increased the terrorist attacks, this new wave of terrorist attacks that we've just seen, where they're using their own vehicles as a weapon, running people over, and then when they're not successful with that, they go run over and stab them or beat them to death, and that's been pretty awful. What we've seen here. In fact, we haven't seen anything like this since I would say 2002, in the last wave of the Intifada terrorism that has been plaguing the land. So you just heard a wonderful, I would say, insight from our good friend here, Jonathan, on how this has affected not just Sweden, because it will affect Sweden, because by allowing this type of mentality to thrive here in the Middle East, it's very dangerous, and I think it's important that we understand what we're talking about when we're talking about these decisions that are being taking place here. It's not an easy solution, and you can't just give a license to a nation that's not a nation. And you have a legitimate nation, a legitimate democracy. I'm standing right here on the lawn of the representation of this democracy, where right just a few hundred meters over from here is the Supreme Court of Israel. And that's where we've had 2 Supreme Court judges, and both of them Muslim Arabs. So this is the democracy in the Middle East, and to come against the only democracy in the Middle East and to expect there not to be repercussions in your country, that's basically impossible. So this is Doron Keidar reporting to you from Jerusalem on this special report. Thank you for listening. Shalom.
Just to make sure that you caught what Doron pointed out there. Once Sweden recognized the Palestinian state, violence in Israel increased dramatically. We told you Monday about a soldier who was attacked at the train station in Tel Aviv. So violence has moved now from Jerusalem to also include Tel Aviv. He was stabbed multiple times, and after several excruciating hours in the hospital, he did die. The 26-year-old gal who was attacked as well, she also died that day. So we lost 2 people from terrorist attacks on Monday. And this first article really concerns me in light of what we just heard about Sweden. On November 28th, this comes from the Jerusalem Post, French lawmakers will vote on whether or not to recognize the Palestinian state, AFP reported on Wednesday. That picture is in France with Palestinian flags everywhere. It was reported on November 5th that left-wing lawmakers in France's parliament were readying to submit a motion calling on the government to extend recognition, following suit with other European countries such as Sweden and the UK's symbolic recognition vote. Like Britain, France does not classify Palestine as a state, but it says it could extend recognition if it believed doing so would help promote peace between the Palestinians and Israel.
In the past, France has supported Palestinian membership in the United Nations Cultural Agency, UNESCO, and its non-member observer country status at the UN. France's Foreign Minister, Laurent Fabius, said on October 14th that Paris would recognize a Palestinian state if negotiations failed, making clear that any such decision would not be a symbolic gesture. Until now, the prevailing idea was that recognition should be linked to negotiations, Fabius said. But if negotiations were to prove impossible or have no conclusion, then France will naturally have to assume its responsibilities.
But on the other side of the table, however, French lawmaker Mir Habib is strongly opposed to any such move. Habib called for Europe to wake up and realize that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is not about territory. Europe and France specifically refuse to recognize the reality and think that if they recognize a Palestinian state, the conflict will end, Habib said. When will they wake up? The free world must unite and realize that recognizing a Palestinian state without negotiations at this time is a grave mistake that will be costly for Europe. Habib pointed out that hundreds of French citizens went to fight in Syria. Unfortunately, he said, more and more French Muslims identify with Islamic extremism.
Well, we're moving to Germany now. This report also from the Jerusalem Post. Last month, the EU pledged 450 million euros to help rebuild Gaza. On Tuesday, Arne Gericke, a German member of the European Parliament, warned that the funding pledged could directly contribute to terrorism without proper oversight on aid money. Gericke said EU payment controls were light years behind where they should be. Proper checks and balances must be put into place. As things stand, we cannot be sure that EU funds are not being used for terror tunnels and weapons. It would sicken most European taxpayers to know that the EU itself could be directly contributing to the tragic cycle of violence, he quoted.
Gericke of the European Conservatives and Reformists Group sounded the alarm in the European Parliament at a hearing on NGOs, that's non-governmental organizations, that are supported by the EU that back terrorism. That's the NGOs that back terrorism. Mm-hmm. The hearing was organized by European Friends of Israel. Gericke pointed out that although every U.S. aid dollar is subject to congressional oversight and is regulated even after it's in Palestinian bank accounts, members of the European Parliament don't have such power, and the EU does not have that control over funding.
In December 2013, the European Court of Auditors found that nearly 2 billion euros in aid was untraceable, and of that, 400 million euros of the missing funds went to Palestinian Authority and Gaza alone. Last week, auditors discovered that 2.6% of the EU's budget for external relations, aid, and enlargement was used erroneously, meaning it could not be properly accounted for. And if that percentage is applied to the 450 million euros pledged to Gaza, it would mean that 11.7 million euros could conceivably end up in the hands of Hamas. Gericke warned Hamas only needs a small percentage of the massive amounts of money that will be transferred to build more tunnels. Nobody is saying that Gaza shouldn't be rebuilt. A prosperous Gaza is an absolute necessity in many processes, in any peace process. But that doesn't mean that EU taxpayers should be supporting terrorism. Nor should Americans.
It's nice to hear a voice of common sense.
Isn't it?
Speaking up.
One.
Okay, the next article is a combination of Reuters, USA Today, and even Wikipedia. The Nigerian envoy to Washington has severely criticized U.S. support, or lack thereof, in their battle against Boko Haram militants. Insufficient U.S. support includes not only failure to share enough intelligence, but failure to sell needed weaponry to Nigeria to fight the Islamist group. There is no use giving us the type of support that enables us to deliver light jabs to the terrorists when what we need to give them is the killer punch, Ambassador Aide Edifuyu posted on the Nigerian embassy's website on Tuesday. He appealed for greater backing from Washington and rejected claims of human rights abuses that have limited some U.S. military assistance.
Boko Haram militants have been slaughtering and terrorizing Christians in Nigeria for the past 5 years. More than 200 schoolgirls, the majority of them Christians, were kidnapped by Boko Haram militants nearly 7 months ago. The few who have escaped have reported forced conversions and marriages to the Islamic militants. Although the United States ramped up its support for Nigeria in the wake of the abduction of the schoolgirls, including high-tempo surveillance flights, and efforts to bolster intelligence sharing, the U.S. later acknowledged a reduction in surveillance flights.
The Nigerian envoy disputed U.S. government claims that it had addressed problems with intelligence sharing. He also criticized a U.S. refusal to sell weaponry that would have brought down the terrorists within a short time. He said Boko Haram fighters in stolen military uniforms were to blame for abuses attributed to Nigeria's armed forces. When asked about the remarks, an Obama administration official said Washington remained committed to helping Nigeria address its extremist threat and supported its efforts to free Boko Haram's kidnapped victims. The U.S. official suggested any solution in Nigeria could not be a solely military one, instead requiring a comprehensive approach encompassing human rights and the needs of victimized communities. And right there, I would like to add, how are you going to help them if you don't first get the militants under control?
That's right.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, on Monday, a suicide bomber detonated explosives at a high school assembly in the northeastern Nigerian city of Potiskum, near Kano. Just 1 week ago, a suicide bomb attack on a religious procession of moderate Muslims killed 30 in the same city. Monday's school attack bore the typical Boko Haram method of operation, bold and brutal. As some 2,000 students gathered for Monday morning's weekly assembly at the Government Technical Science College, a suicide bomber stood among them dressed in their very school uniform, explosives hidden in a backpack. Like countless other massacres attributed to the group, school children were the target. In this case, boys attending a non-Quranic school.
A morgue attendant said 48 bodies were brought to the hospital and all appeared to be between the ages of 11 and 20. Hospital records show 79 other students were admitted, and health workers said that they included serious injuries that may require amputations. The hospital was so overcrowded that some patients were squashed to a bed. Survivors said the bomber appeared to have hidden the explosives in a type of rucksack popular with students. Months ago, Nigeria's military reported finding a bomb factory where explosives were being sewn into rucksacks in the northern city of Kano.
Well, Boko Haram, which means Western education is sinful in the local Hausa language, believes that girls should not attend school and that boys should only pursue Quranic studies. Males are slaughtered, females are abducted and forced to be wives and slaves. Since 2009, Boko Haram has seized dozens of villages and towns and attacked schools, churches, and mosques. The group aims to establish an Islamic state in Nigeria, which is Africa's most populous country, with a Muslim majority north and predominantly Christian south. The insurgency has ravaged the poor northeast corner of the country.
There's growing frustration over the Nigerian government's failure to stem the violence. A general election is due to be held in 2015, though it is unclear how that's going to happen with northeastern Nigeria in chaos. 3 states remain under a state of emergency that was put in place in May of last year. Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, himself a Christian who has done much good for the country, has come under sharpening public criticism for his government's apparent inability to check Boko Haram's insurgency. His government's announcement of a ceasefire last month failed to stop almost daily attacks. Boko Haram denied they had agreed to the ceasefire. Actually, I think that was one of 2 that happened right about the same time. But, you know, I can't help but look at the situation and go, okay, what is going on here? We have a Christian president in Nigeria who has done a lot of good for that country, a lot of good. And we have militant Islamists, just like the Islamic State, that have been wreaking havoc in that country for 5 years. And we're not stepping in and doing anything.
That's right.
Now, I know that France did step in and do a little bit a couple of years ago. I know we started talking to you about Boko Haram at least 2 years ago.
You know, you need to point out one thing. to people who don't understand. When they says these forced marriages,
It's
What-
rape.
they can't rape them under Muslim law because that's against Allah's.
So they marry them,
They marry them, rape them, and divorce them
sell them.
and sell them. Good outfit.
Well, we're going to.
So I'm just going to
Okay.
say, everybody, you know what? It would be really, 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 really great if you would contact your senators and congressmen, especially the ones that are about to take office, and tell them, get after this. Demand that something is done in Nigeria
and,
to stem
and the
this
Middle
tide
East.
of violence.
In the Middle East.
Well, they are doing something in the Middle East.
Very
It's
little.
not enough, but they're not doing anything. We are not doing anything at all, which is why their ambassador has called us to task. You're not helping us.
Well, in my opinion, we sent all those military people into Africa to fight Ebola because we didn't want them to fight the real problem, which is Muslims.
The Islamic extremists.
Yep.
There are good Muslim
Yeah.
people. It just so happens that these are, you hear about how zealots, religious zealots. I don't care what the religion is. If you're a religious zealot, you're going to wreak havoc. And it's been true with Christians.
Everything.
It's been true in every religion. It's just
That's right.
now the top news is the religious zealots in
Islam.
And they must be stopped.
That's right. Do you want to go with this article from Mexico? This is from the AFP. Chilpancingo. I doubt if I pronounced that right.
That's how I'd say it, Chopatzinco.
Violent protests have erupted in Mexico since authorities said Friday that gang hitmen confessed to murdering and then incinerating the bodies of 43 students after corrupt police handed over the young men in September in Guerrero. On Tuesday, Mexicans, furious at the news, torched the ruling party's Guerrero state headquarters and briefly took a police commander prisoner as growing protest rocked President Enrique Peña Nieto's government. Workers fled the building while riot police clashed with protesters in running street battles as black smoke billowed from the white two-story building of the Institutional Revolutionary Party in the southern state's capital, Chilpancingo.
Some 1,000 people, led by students and a teachers' union, marched in Chilpancingo before throwing stones and firebombs at police. 3 officers and 2 journalists, including a photographer working for the AFP, were injured after being struck by rocks, said a civil protection official. The protesters grabbed the state's deputy public security chief, Juan Jose Gatica, and held him for several hours before handing him to a local human rights group. Roman Hernandez, a spokesman for the Human Rights Center, told AFP the officer was released on the condition that 2 detained teachers be freed, but that the pair had yet to be let go.
Parents of the students who deeply distrust the government said they will only believe their sons are dead when they get DNA results from independent Argentine forensic experts. Manuel Martinez, a spokesman for the families of the 43, said more protest would come after another disappointing meeting with the country's Attorney General and Interior Minister. We're tired of the same speeches. We want them back alive, he told AFP after the talks in Chilpancingo's airport. The protest will continue. We will take away the power of the political parties.
And then on Monday, protesters besieged Acapulco's airport for 3 hours, forcing 3 flight cancellations. And on Saturday, a group of 20 demonstrators briefly set fire to the wooden door of the National Palace in Mexico City at the end of a march that had drawn thousands of people. The apparent slaughter of the trainee teachers has undermined Peña Nieto's assurances that his security strategy was bearing fruit and reducing drug-fueled violence that has killed more than 80,000 people since 2008.
Wow.
So thank you for your support. Sorry that the news is so bad, but it's the way it is.
I bet you didn't hear it anywhere else. We love you. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.